Why did I bring this with me? Apparently it's a comfort microphone. Hello, 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 and welcome to the RIPE 91 edition of the Security Working Group in-person, physical, 3D, whatever way you wish to describe the meeting. I'm Brian Nisbet, one of our co-chairs. Tobias Knecht is here, and Marcus is online, I believe, as well. Marcus de Bruin, our third co-chair, but unfortunately couldn't be present with us in lovely, lovely Bucharest this week. So, yes, so again, welcome to you all. And thanks to and welcome to indeed our scribe and chat monitors and wonderful steno people. Obviously, all of this is being streamed live over a variety of platforms globally, including Meet Echo. And if you are joining us on Meet Echo, please do, interact as well, either via the chat Q&A function, or indeed put your hand up. You can show us your lovely faces and we can hear your lovely voices from far, far away. Unless it's like 4 o'clock in the morning and wherever you are and you have terrible bed hair or something. I have no frame of reference myself. However, any interactions that we are making in the meeting are covered by the RIPE Code of Conduct. So, there's a lot more detail and it's a lot more complex than be excellent to each other, but in general, be excellent to each other. But yeah, all the interactions in this working group are covered by the Code of Conduct. We're using a new system for everything at RIPE meetings, the talks and all the rest, which is pre-talks. And we're all getting used to this system, and thanks to the amazing folks at the NCC for guiding us through it. That will also be, you can rate the talks if you so wish in the working group via that system, and we would encourage you to do so because it gives us information on what's important to the working group and what you would like to hear more of, what was useful, etc. So yes, so we sent some minutes out. Nobody said anything. It all seems good. If nobody else says anything now, we will take them as approved. We will take them as approved. Yay. Does anyone have anything they would desperately like to add to the agenda at this point in time? Nope, again. Okay, cool. Well, then we will proceed with the agenda we have. So if we can move on to the next slide deck, please. Yes, excellent, wonderful. Oh, that is my mistake. There's only one item on that. That's entirely mine, and I didn't edit the slide deck properly. That, or I'm about to ask Dick to get up on stage unexpectedly. So recent list discussion. There hasn't been any. We would love there to be some discussion on the mailing list. There's a whole shiny mailing list there, almost like fresh fallen snow, which would be wonderful to have. Digital footprints all over and lots of discussion on important relevant topics. So I don't have anything to talk about here, but the mailing list is there. It is open to everyone. So it would be wonderful if people wished to talk on it. On the online agenda, we mention policies. We don't have any policies either, which we've only had once or twice. But again, as always, if there are relevant policies in relation to security, come and talk to us. The policy process can look intimidating, but one of the whole points of the co-chairs is to help anyone who wishes to submit a policy, to talk to them about that, to try and work with them to bring that through the process. So never look at it and go, I have an idea for a policy, but I'm all alone and scared. Email the co-chairs, talk to us about it. And importantly, if we sit there and we go, actually, you know what, a different working group should handle that policy, then we'll tell you. We'll introduce you to the lovely co-chairs of the other working group. And again, joyously as a community, we'll hopefully bring a policy together. Sorry, I suddenly realized water would be useful. So, now you get more of me. Interaction with law enforcement. agencies and associated government entities, departments of justice, all of this kind of thing is really important. I'm on multiple record of having said this, and it's really important that we as a community engage and show to them that they are part of the community, and also show to them the tools, the pieces, the policies, all the things that are there to help everybody, including them, in navigating the internet. So it was, and it's in our own enlightened self-interest to have them involved in the community, very much so. So it was very nice of Europol to invite me to their annual cybercrime conference, which took place a couple of weeks ago in The Hague. And as an addendum to that, the NCC were running a roundtable and some training, which they invited me to participate as well. So I thought I'd take a moment and talk about that and give you my reflections on that event. Unfortunately, due to inclement weather brought about by the terrible things we're doing to the planet, I did have to leave early, but I think it was a suitable time to kind of get the feel for the event. So, I mean, Emmanuel can tell you a lot more about this event, as he's one of the organizers from Europol, but it's an annual event. It's a mix of law enforcement, so many cops, law enforcement, regulators, data protection people, cybersecurity companies, experts from them, civil society, obviously ORAORs, et cetera, et cetera. So a whole bunch of people who are interested in the area. And I found a lot of them, super interesting to both listen to and then talk to. The training day was about, I think we had about 20-something people in the room from a mix of different European law enforcement agencies. And it was really useful. Now, the downside is I've been at a number of these before, and they're always great. And then unfortunately, quite regularly, as we've all experienced, the law enforcement people change. They get sent somewhere else. They go to a different group. The documentation they leave behind them is not great. And so the person who's now taken on, who's been transferred from traffic or from wherever else, one Irish guard I was talking to had been transferred from crime scene investigation into cybercrime, and has to learn anew all of these things. So that's one of the biggest challenges I think we come across, is the changes in personnel, is the losses of information. And the conversations we were having in The Hague very much reminded me of the last time I was at one of these training sessions, which was 10 years ago, with similar reaction to the great tools and the great information, and just a concern on my part that will these people still be in that role in 6 months? Will they still remember? I mean, there was a guy there from Iceland who was basically couldn't wait to get home to use RipeStat. And who amongst us hasn't been able to wait to get home to use RipeStat? But it was really positive, and it was also really useful. And I say this, of course, I would say this about myself, but I think it's really useful to have an operator or two in the room as well. Because the NC folks, they know their stuff, they can talk really well about it, but it's also really great to be able to say, as an operator of a network, and here is an exact, here's an anecdote which refers exactly to the thing that's happening. So I think that's a really good mix, and doesn't always have to be me, but I would encourage, again, when the NC are doing this, to bring those people along. And I think, there is all of that conversation. Some of the law enforcement people desperately want to arrest a server somewhere, and they want to know exactly where in the world something is, and that's not possible. And it's about talking about what is there, what is possible, what's in the database, and how, and in the registry, and how you can navigate through that. Again, a really important topic, and one that some people definitely get. And, again, my experience of this is all my reflections. This is not stating God-given fact, but and some people kind of never will, they'll always want to be able to press a button or pick up a phone and find out exactly where the bad actors are operating from. And that's something that we as a community have to navigate when we talk to people and explain. So the conference itself, I thought it was really, really useful. I also felt, in conversation with a few other people from the technical side of the house, that we were almost the bad kids down the back of the room in the auditorium, yeah, being a bit, oh, they're going to say this thing. I mean, it's going to be about encryption, obviously. There was at one point someone on stage, and I'm obviously not going to mention any names or any details because that is the nature of the conference. If you took your phone out to even look like you're about to take a photograph, you got a polite tap on the shoulder, and these were not the kind of people you ever wanted a polite tap on the shoulder from. But there was a comment which started off with, privacy is a fundamental right. And I already whispered to the person sitting to my right the word but before the person on stage said the word but. And that is a thing that we need to be honest about. That is one of the biggest, I think, one of the biggest divides, one of the biggest clashes between technical societies, between our community and, sorry, between parts of our community and the other parts of the community, which is law enforcement. And that's the big conversation. That's the big difficulty. There was a comment made about compromise being needed, and I understand compromise, I understand working together, but I think the point that I felt wasn't being raised or understood is you can't compromise with mathematics. You can't change, you can't do something to encryption in a compromise fashion. It is a binary state. It is either there or it is not there. And again, I think that's one of the really complicated things, and the things that it was really very clear in the conference that was a fundamental divide. And it's really important to keep talking about that and keep trying to explain and keep trying to discuss. But we're not hiding a secret way of breaking encryption. It's not that we don't want to tell people, it's that it doesn't exist. And I certainly don't have a solution to this in any way, shape, or form. Importantly, I really believe we all want the same thing. We all want the internet to be safer for its users. We all want it not to be enabling crime, if at all possible. But, you know, but that doesn't change the fact that there are different ways of approaching that. The conference also shared a number of operational reports, which really were quite eye-opening in relation to the work that law enforcement are doing, again, without breaking encryption. And I wouldn't do that job. And I will stand here and I'll be very honest, I would not do that job. Certainly looking at some of the pieces which were shared around things like AI-generated CSAM is scary. I mean, beyond scary. I think scary is far too mild a word. And there's lots of stuff there, and it's really important that is shown and seen. And again, I think that it's important that the technical side of the community sees more of that as well. And it was great to see as well. It was great to see the companies that are interacting in special operation groups or whatever else with Europol, with other groups, to show that interaction. So lots of very positive things out of that. But I don't want to, I'm going to be very blunt, as I frequently am, about some of the problems I see. And of course, like any conference, like what we're all doing here, is super important. And the coffee breaks, as always, were worth the metaphorical price of entry. Even the queue, because there's metal detectors and things, so the queue was 20 minutes long to get into the building. That was really useful. I met a bunch of people in that queue who I'm now like, okay, cool, these are important people I want to talk to. But the networking is very useful. I met a bunch of Irish guards, the Garda Síochána, the Irish police force, who I'm now like, great, you're the superintendent in the cybercrime division. As an operator, I'd never spoken to them. So met them at this, we're gonna have meetings with them, it's gonna be a positive thing. So the networking was very useful, and not just with the law enforcement, with regulators, with other members of the technical teams as well. So really great opportunity. And I think, the law enforcement and people and regulators very clearly felt comfortable in that space in a way they don't always feel comfortable in this space. And that's why that exchange is so important, because we all feel different levels of comfort in different spaces, and being in different places enables that dialogue, which is super useful. So that's kind of it. As I said, this was the reflections. This was general. I think it was a very positive event. There were definitely things that concern me still there, and conversations we still need to have. But having that kind of event, having in the same way that we're, welcoming law enforcement here, seeing law enforcement welcome the technical community into their house is vitally important as well. And I was very glad I went, even if I had the anxiety of will my plane take off because of Storm Amy, and things like that. And but no, very, very good. And I think it's a dialogue that needs to, obviously that dialogue needs to keep going. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments. As I said, this was me reflecting as me. These views do not represent necessarily even the security working group, and they definitely don't represent the NCC. I would not put words in their mouth, but I wanted to share, and I hope it's useful. But if no, cool, yeah. I mean, again, yeah, please, Ritter.
I
still need to say who you are, though.
Oh, Rüdiger Volk, still retired and still around.
I'm waiting for that. I'm not retired anymore. I'm back.
I would like to ask whether that has been essentially the only political European level thing that you observed since last RIPE meeting?
It's the only event I was at since the last RIPE meeting. It's not the only political level thing I have observed since the last RIPE meeting, but it's the only event I was at. I mean,
yeah. Well, the question that comes to my mind is at the last RIPE meeting in the Connect working group session, not Connect, the cooperation working group. I think something was presented and asked for that might be relevant to a security working group to follow. We did have as guest speaker Martin Rüdiger from the EU Commission, who was talking about the NIS2. Let me
very familiar.
Yeah.
Last week was the first anniversary of lots of countries not transcribing it into law.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, he was announcing that they were starting to create a multi-stakeholder forum on internet standards deployment for the purpose of giving flesh to the NIS2 Implementing Act. And specifically, it mentions cybersecurity risk management measures. And then, for being more specific, DNS and routing security and email. And my question would be, did you observe anything happening there? Is following that activity something that the working group should be involved in?
So, Hisham, I feel you might have some follow-up to that. So from my point of view, I have not been involved. I don't think, Tobias, I don't know if you have or not. But I mean, yes, we probably should be. Can we enable Tobias's microphone over there? We probably should be, yeah. But again, the NCC may well be doing some stuff there, and we'll let Hisham in a moment. But Tobias, you want to go first?
So Tobias, also one of the chairs here. So there is several things going on in the European Commission at the moment. There's other type of organizations starting to evolve out of that, especially with what happened at ICANN with the regulations or with the new contracts about abuse management, abuse handling that they have to do. There's obviously a lot of movement at the moment. We also have, at least from my perspective in my professional life, but also a little bit with the head of the chair of the security working group, there is a lot of conversation at the moment also on EU level on how to how to tackle the issue of the whole online scams, online security, and so on and so forth. So I don't know if it doesn't feel very coordinated at the moment, because there's a lot of things popping up and they're also going away again, but there's a few that stick. So it's kind of, it feels like this, you know, this super early, although that's a little bit, yeah, jokingly meant, super early way of, okay, we now need to think about security, and we now need to think about online scams and so on and so forth. So it feels like there's something moving, but I don't know, you know, it's a little bit early to say what's at the end kind of surviving and what's coming out of it. Thank you.
Hisham Ibrahim, RIPE NCC. So we, as RIPE NCC, we've been talking with the European Commission since the beginning of the year, actually, maybe even last year, about what they're looking at when it comes to security under NIS2, right? The talk that Rudiger is referring to was the first talk that the European Commission came, and if you ask me, I think they're taking this the right way. They're bringing it to the communities, trying to learn from them what is there, have better understanding of how to cooperate before they put something forward. They do have something under NIS2 that says something to the point about encouraging best practices when it comes to security and up-to-date technologies or something like that. I don't remember the text off the top of my head. So they came to the RIPE meeting first. This was the first place they presented it. I know they went to the IETF after that. And we're still working with them for them to understand what scope do they have there. To Rudiger's question about does the security working group have a role there? I would say absolutely yes. I think there is a lot that could be done between the working group here and coordination, whether with the NCC or with other bodies. We had presentations today from the IETF. Miriam organized a sit down with me with people from the IEB as well, to also talk about standards and what, you know, can we do in terms of coordination. And I do think that there is room for us to do more there, to demonstrate that, yes, this is something important, and that is high on our minds.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, you know, we could talk about this, and I'm not saying not, but we have a limited amount of time. This is almost like what a mailing list is for as well, to raise things, to discuss things, to see who the right people we need to get in the room are. So Alex and Manio, you want to join the queue for the mic? That's a thing to do with that. But Alex, if you want to.
Alex de Jode from the Amsterdam Internet Exchange. I think it's very important to realize that NIS2 is targeting organizations. So it's not about protocols, but about organizations. Basically, if you have an ISO 27001, you add liability for your director and you specify the supply chain a little bit better, you have NIS2. So the discussion or the conversation we have with RIPE is not only about how are you managing the EU connection, but a lot of members here are a member customer of RIPE.
Yes.
So I, as AMSIX, also have expectations about how I can secure my supply chain. And for IP addresses in RPKI, RIPE is an essential part. So I do expect some NIS2 compliance stuff coming out of RIPE NCC. And if we as a work group can help with that, that's fine. But there are some expectations also from customers, at least from AMSIX, about the security stance and the posture of RIPE.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm going to, unless it's very quick, Rudiger.
Yeah, well, okay. I would like to respond to your statement that NIS2 is only about organizations. Actually, this activity definitely is saying, well, okay, we want to talk about protocols, standards, and best practices, and they will come up with, well, okay, documents that may force that will be used to check whether an organization actually deploys acceptable stuff, and if you don't beyond the just organizational certification that you have, you may get into big trouble.
Okay.
That seems to be the plan. And the plan, by the way, as presented in Lisbon and in Madrid at IETF a few weeks later, is calling for essentially, well, okay, actually the activity is very well structured.
Mm-hmm.
Would we expect anything else out of Brussels? And the time frame looks like kind of the setup of the activity should be already almost done. So kind of this is pretty serious stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna let we do need to move on. I mean, I think it's yeah. So, but please.
So I'll be short. Emanuele Iovini, Europol. So I was the organizer of the e-governance workshop at Europol. I actually invited RIPE NCC because I want to train our law enforcement on how the database work, how we can get information. Because I think that the key words here are cooperation and understanding. The main reason I'm here is already the third event I attend is because we want to understand each other. We want to understand what we do and why we do. And I think is when we find a good way to communicate, we have almost the same goals, actually, to have a clean internet. So that's why also coming to our cybercrime conference is to let you understand what we do for the greater good. For example, CSAM is a really big problem at the moment, combined with AI. So what I want to show is that we are here, we want to be part of the community, we don't want to enforce anything. For example, the reason why we couldn't allow photographies was to protect our investigators, because they have families, they have people with lanyards which don't want picture like we do here. So nothing different from here. We respect the people. We try to balance rights, in not the term compromise. It's more balance because sometimes I would like to arrest a cyber criminal or someone who promotes child abuse or something instead of his own privacy. So sometimes there is this balance of rights. But this is just to make you understand that we work toward the same objectives, toward the same goal. So this is the start. I think we are on the right road, the right way to cooperate with each other. We have to train ourselves, our investigators, because we have to make sure that most of the investigators know the best practices. It's really hard because every country has thousands of investigators working on different fields. But I think we are on the right way. We can do it. So just to thank you for this moment, to show that you also care about what is the law enforcement perspective on the internet governance aspects. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Romain, if it's very brief, if you have, because we do need to move on.
Thank you, Roman Busk from the RIPE NCC. Just to add, because we are monitoring this NIS2 multi-stakeholder forum that the Commission is about to launch, and actually the policy officer that presented in Lisbon is called Rüdiger as well, and just informed me that the next steps is now coming up. So they're going to launch the call for interest in the coming weeks. So they are going through a lot of bureaucracy. So they got some delays, but it's coming. And they will have a launch event in Brussels around December, if the timeline is still correct. So we're watching and we understand the concerns on both sides, but this is something we need to tackle also within this working group as well.
So yes, something to do with NIS2 has some delays. I am shocked. But no, seriously, and Emanuele, thank you for that as well. Yeah, it was, you know, it was, as I said, it was a good event, and I'm glad I got to speak about it here. Okay, let us move on then. We have two presentations, and our first one, you can bring up the slide for that. We have Yuri. Yes, excellent. So Yuri is going to talk about a thing that I'm going to remember when the slide comes up and I can read the title. There we go. Yes. So leaked secrets in cloud buckets and responsible disclosure outcomes. Yuri, please.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for coming. So my name is Yuri Zholnerovich. So I'm representing TU Delft. So, and this is a joint work between TU Delft, Modot, this is the company in the Netherlands that performs the internet scanning, and Leiden University. So obviously, as I'm assistant professor, so I'm not doing heavy lifting anymore. So majority of the heavy lifting is done by the first author, Soufiane El-Yadmani, so who is representing Modot, and also he's a PhD student in Leiden University. And this work was partially funded by two NWO projects, Theseus and Seaside. So today I want to tell you about our contribution, our small step into how we try to make the internet a little bit more safe. And basically, so you know that the modern applications are not built from scratch. So basically, there are a lot of external services I used. And these services are protected with passwords, usernames, and password keys, API keys, tokens, etc. And it always happened that developers fail to protect these secrets properly. So for instance, a pretty recent case was that Toyota customers database leaked because the secret key for the database was in the GitHub in the code, so hard-coded. So 300,000 Toyota customers detailed were leaked. So also the research shows that median time, so like the 50% of the infrastructure as a code scripts, so they have the hard-coded API keys stored for more than 20 months. And other research shows that 74% of the leaked secrets are never revoked. So this is like kind of, I would say, worrisome sign for us. And there could be like different ways how the secrets can be leaked. So obviously there are like GitHub code, which was like in the past full of the secrets, and GitHub introduced very nice features on how to detect these secrets and notify the owners of the code about this. But there are other ways, like containers, Docker containers, mobile applications. Last week there was ACM CCS conference, and one of the distinguished paper award was given to the presentation about the leaky applications. So there were like detected many Android and iOS applications that contain inside the secrets. So, so what is the research question we tried to answer? So it was well known that cloud storage buckets, they can contain private information. But we wanted to discover like if there are within this cloud storage, there are like API secrets that could give us the possibility to move forward. So what kind of secret key we can detect there, and what other infrastructure and third-party services we can use with these keys. So the methodology was pretty straightforward. So for this work, we used this platform called Grey Hat Warfare. So what it does, it collects from all over the internet the names of the buckets, AWS, GCP, and Azure, and then it tries to list the files inside these buckets. So if the buckets are not correctly protected, so like the permissions are not well configured, you can list the files which are there, and this platform collects the information, the meta information, like the full path to the file, and the update, last update time, created time, and the file size. So we use this platform to search for particular extensions, which according to our assumption may contain different types of the secrets. We downloaded these files locally because we will need to analyze. We removed the duplicates, and then we tried to search for the secrets, and then we validated the secrets. And of course, like because we are academics, we did the responsible disclosure and monitored if the keys are revoked, if the buckets are protected, and so on. So we were searching like number of patterns. So some of them are quite well known. So in the community, some of them we developed ourselves. So we had just several prerequisites which secrets we can use. First of all, we want to, like, I don't know if some of you are aware about TruthfulHawk, for instance. So it detects different kind of the secrets. So you can use this tool as well for detecting if you're leaking some secrets. But our case was we want to have the secrets which we are 100% sure are correct and valid. And second prerequisite was that we want to collect only the secrets that we can responsibly verify. So basically using something like API endpoint, which we can just test with HTTP code 200 and without downloading additional private, possibly private information. So these were like the secret patterns that we selected for our work. And for responsible disclosure, we collaborated with a Dutch company. This is not for profit, CSIRT Global. And why we used them? Because obviously, like once we discovered that we discovered too many secrets. So it's for three of us, it's very difficult to do the responsible disclosure. So CSIRT Global already has some connections with the companies, and they have like the expertise on how to perform open source intelligence to find who are the owner of particular buckets or particular asset. And they have like the resources to do this in mass, like the notify and handle the results and monitor the results. And we did this responsible disclosure, like and collect and monitor the results for 5 months between April 15th and September 15th in 2024. So what are the results? So basically just in the beginning, so grayhead warfare. So it scans the internet like around every couple of months and publish the data set, the latest one, every couple of months. And for instance, the data set that we used from 19th of January to 2024 contained the information about more than 450 open buckets. So this is kind of, I don't know, mind-blowing for me. And the numbers can go up and down, and they added like some other cloud providers recently. So this amount of the unprotected buckets are kind of shocking. And we were searching for 10 different extensions within this cloud buckets, and we found like around more than 9 million of instances of the files which we are interested in analysis. So we downloaded all these files and performed the analysis. So, but of course, it's also interesting to see like other duplicates. And maybe for us, it was like very interesting to see that if you just download randomly 400 different buckets, you can figure out that 30%, around 30% of the files inside these buckets are duplicates. So you have different customers, but the files, they're sometimes very similar. And with our extensions, with our files, which we downloaded and we were interested in, the percent of the duplicates is even higher. So for instance, for PS1 scripts, like you can have like up to 80% of the duplicates. So pretty interesting. Yeah. And we detected 215 like leaks. So here on this slide, you can see what are different types of the leaks that we found. So obviously, as Amazon is the most used probably service, so we found like more than 100 exactly AWS access tokens. And some of these cases were pretty terrible. So for instance, with one token, we got the access to 300 more buckets protected with this token. So you can download a lot of private information there. The most shocking example was the CrowdStrike Falcon admin key. So basically with this key, so CrowdStrike Falcon is kind of EDR system, And with this key, you can take over completely the organization network. So EDR, you can upload malware, you can delete logs, like you can be completely undetected there. And I don't know, like some other cases is AWS SAS SMTP API keys. So like you can send the emails on behalf of the organization. So which is also pretty bad for me. And obviously, so one part is like how to notify the responsible people about these issues. And of course, like with 200 keys, it's not very easy task. So that's why we collaborated with CSIRT Global to do this thing, and it took us a while to do this thing. And we managed to identify 160 owners of the keys, and we didn't manage to identify 50. And 5 were dropped during this period of time because the keys were removed. So in total, you have 215. Where were these companies? So these companies were located in 37 different countries. So it's also like, you know, very difficult to notify to people in many countries. And obviously, the main one is the USA, because USA probably has the largest adoption of different services. And sectors, obviously computer and information technology, but also retail stores, finance and insurance, education and research. So all these issues were reported to companies in these sectors. So what was interesting, so we, maybe because we collaborated with this CSIRT Global, so the notification was, and the response was pretty fast. So majority of the issues were removed within the first couple of days. And on this graph, you can see the number of cases which were removed, like fixed. And reaction means that we, on our email that we sent, okay, you have this leak into this bucket in this file, and yeah, this key. So sometimes you get the reply, and this is reaction to us. But some of the organization just fix without replying to us. Of course, we as researchers, we prefer when people reply to us and we can like discuss with them more. But like at least they fixed, and this is for us also like a good sign. So regarding what security measures companies took, so 19 cases, in 19 cases, they did everything right. So they restricted access to the bucket, they restricted access to the file, and they revoked the corresponding token or secret. But in several cases, like in 25, they either restricted access to the bucket or to the file, but they didn't revoke the token. And because we were like checking constantly during this 5 months period, these cases, I don't know like what happened. So 25 cases, token are still there. So they are not accessible, but we know these tokens. So one particular example was very interesting. So we notified to the company. The next day we observed that they removed their access to the token. And in a couple of days, this token appeared once again. So this was like, okay, what's going on? So we notified them once again that, okay, like you fixed and now you're revert back. And apparently there are like some systems who are depending on this token, and it took them a while after to remove these things. And regarding the properties of the files with leaks, so the most, I think, interesting case that we found the secret that was fixed, and it is dated back in 2014. So more than 10 years, the key was available there. And yeah, it was fixed only after our responsible disclosure. So yeah, what are the conclusions? So cloud storage is a major source of secret leaks. So obviously, in our case, we just touch the surface, I would say, because we analyzed only 10 different extensions. We analyze just you know, the keys that we can verify, and we can like verify this in a responsible way. And we, like, even with these restrictions, we managed to identify 215 very valid secrets. As I said, just one slide back, some leaks are 10 years old. And yeah, so definitely employing the organization that has experience in doing the responsible disclosure, that has already like kind of connection with the companies, helped us to fix like 95 out of 160, but there are still like 65 cases which are not fixed, even our responsible disclosure. So thank you very much. If you would like to read more, so please, this paper is published as the S&P conference.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Apparently so. Steal my water bottle. Please.
Hello, I am Mark van der Waal from EFNIC. Have you had any negative or hostile reactions when you did the responsible disclosure thing?
So they, like, I would say not nasty, but they said like, okay, and what? So one particular, this case was like with AWS ES SMTP token. So they said, okay, you have this token, what can you do? So show us that what can you do. So after verifying that indeed this is the company token, so we sent them the email from the security account. So like, please fix this,
Nice.
something like this.
Did they at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
So sometimes you need to persuade, like, you know, people.
Yeah, because I think, you know, I think we've seen lots of instances where people are like, you've hacked me, you know, or things like that.
Yeah,
so.
but they were aware, so.
So yeah, Tobias, very cool project. Did you, when you inform people, did you inform the companies that own the keys? So did you inform AWS and they more or less went to their customers and said, hey, this is going to happen? Or did you go directly to the companies that use the keys?
Yes, exactly. So thank you for the question. Yes, we identified the exact owners, either through buckets names. So sometimes like it's becoming pretty obvious what is the company from the bucket name, or going into the bucket, like into the files within this bucket to find who can be the owner of this bucket. Right. So we didn't inform the AWS. Now Google has the program to notify Google, and then Google will try to protect this thing. I don't remember if this is the case for AWS. Correct me if I'm wrong if somebody has this information, but I definitely remember that Google started this program. So we can notify to Google, and Google will try to restrict the access to the bucket. So I don't know if it is the case for AWS.
Right. I think you could always send it to security at AWS, or because I know, for example, SES, we work with the SES people, and they would be very, very interested in that data because they know that people spam through those channels. SendGrid the same. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Leo Vigoda speaking for myself. Isn't this the kind of thing you would expect the providers to want to proactively check to make sure that their customers aren't leaking the tokens that allow someone else to use their service and therefore diminish the reputation of the provider overall? Or am I being unreasonable in expecting that sort of thing?
Thank you. Very good question. So, like, as the provider, you mean AWS or? Mm-hmm. So I think for, as I said, so Google started doing this. So if they detect that the key is used, like some secret is leaked, so they try to protect this bucket from being, like, restrict the access to the bucket. I think we expect too much from these companies. Like, you cannot check all the sources where this information can leak. So maybe yes, maybe no. I don't have the definite answer. Sorry.
I mean, anecdotally, I'm very sure that, you know, their support people find these on a regular basis. I would agree. I think that if, you know, if you can do some of this, they have easier access in theory than you do. So hopefully, as you do this, maybe they'll, if Google are doing some of it, then maybe AWS is, I think, the biggest dog in this particular area, will hopefully follow suit.
I hope so. The awareness matters. So like providing these presentations and giving this speech make more people aware about this problem, and eventually I hope we will come to the better solution. So definitely now there is already more and more efforts in protecting the buckets like the cloud storage more.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Yuri. So, Thomas, please. So, Thomas is going to talk about, yeah, those poor advertiser hoardings, I think, are going to be in a bad state after this meeting. Anyway, talk to us about RegCheck, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas. I'm a PhD candidate at KU Leuven and a researcher at DNS Belgium, the registry of a .be top-level domain. And today I will be presenting RegCheck, which is an approach to proactively identify malicious domain name registrations. This has been developed in collaboration between DNS Belgium and SIDN, the registries of the .be and the .nl top-level domains, respectively. And it has been deployed by .be as a part of their registration process. So domain name abuse includes phishing and other types of scams. And phishing still makes a lot of victims every year. And these victims can suffer serious losses. The Belgian Federation for the Banking Sector reports that Belgians lose about 40 million euros to phishing every year, which is quite a high figure. And a part of this is facilitated using abuse of .be domain names. So those domain names are what we want to prevent. And let me show what the former timeline of a phishing website used to be. So the phisher would register a domain name and then make use of it by putting content on it that aims to deceive visitors. And then they would spread links to these websites. Eventually, this website would be detected and mitigated such that it is no longer accessible to visitors. But usually, at least several hours have passed between the registration and the mitigation of a domain name, which is more than enough time to make victims. And that's, well, our aim to prevent. So instead of using a reactive mitigation strategy like this, we want to use a more proactive strategy, such that a website, well, a suspicious domain name gets detected within milliseconds of its registration rather than hours. And the way we do this is that right after registration, we perform an automated risk scoring. And this risk scoring, this can have two outcomes. Either everything looks okay and the domain is immediately activated, or the risk scoring flags that there is something suspicious about the domain, and then the registrant is should undergo an identity check. They basically have to prove that they are who they have claimed to be. And if they do this, then the domain gets activated, same way. But if they don't, then the domain, oh, that's too fast. Then the domain remains inactive until they do provide this proof. The domain is still theirs, it is still registered on their name, but it just cannot be used. And this acts as a barrier against malicious actors. Now, this approach in itself is not new at all. It has been used by DNS Belgium since the end of 2020. But at the time, the risk scoring approach was done using a manually implemented role-based system. And this has quite some limitations. First, because the rules are manually implemented, it is difficult and time-consuming to maintain and to keep up with new strategies that could come up. And secondly, it's also a very coarse-grained system. What I mean by that is that each role in the system would have a weight of 1, 2, or 3, and then the total risk score is just the sum of the weights of the matching rules. But there is only a limited capacity for identity verifications, so we need to have a threshold somewhere, like what goes through and what gets held back. And well, the role-based system did not allow for a very fine-grained threshold. You could say that, okay, we set the threshold at 1, but then it might be too strict and select more than there is capacity for. Or you could say that the threshold is 2, but then that might not be strict enough and let some suspicious domains through. So a machine learning approach can overcome these limitations if we solve some other challenges first. For example, we need to assign labels to past registrations. We still have the capacity constraints to respect when the model is deployed live. And thirdly, we also need to make the decision in real time, right after registration. Another challenge has been that existing machine learning solutions did not really work in our case, because they largely rely on the assumption that malicious domain names are registered in bulk or as campaigns, which is a behavior that we do not really observe at .be. So our approach also needed to be tailored to individual malicious registrations. So I will dive into our machine learning approach. First, we need to assign labels to past registrations. We train a tree ensemble model, such as random forests. This is a category of machine learning models that use a collection of decision trees that together make a prediction. And this is a category of models that performs very well on the sort of data that we have. Then we need to set a threshold for what we select. And finally, we can deploy the model as part of our registration process. So first, the data and the labels. We used 1.4 million registrations, new registrations since 2018 to train a model. And we need to label those registrations as malicious or benign. This is to teach the machine learning model like what should count as good and what should count as bad. And this is a non-trivial problem because there are multiple interpretations that you could give to what is malicious or what is benign. So if a domain name has ended up on a trusted block list, or if it has been revoked by DNS Belgium, then we know that it's malicious. So then we give it the malicious label. We can also use the identity verifications as a label source. And because of the rule-based system, we have historical data for this. What we do is, if a registrant was required to go through verification and they completed the process, then we assume that their registration is benign. If they do not complete the process, then we wait 120 days to give them enough time. And if they don't, then we also label it as malicious. Now, this is clearly a weaker label than a previous one, because if you do not complete verification, that does not prove in any way that you are a malicious actor. You could have plenty of other reasons for not completing verification, the simplest being that you are not in any hurry to use a domain name. But we still want to include those in the positive labels, because a part of them would still be malicious ones that were stopped by the verification, and we absolutely want to include those. In our context, a false positive also has a lower cost than a false negative, because a false positive just means an extra verification step for a registrant, while a false negative means an actual malicious website that can exist, and that means real harm to victims. So we primarily want to minimize the false negatives. So with this labeling strategy, we have still only managed to label a very small minority of all the registrations. What we do with the rest is that there are plenty of active domain names that have existed for a long time without having any abuse reported on them. So in those cases, we assume that these are benign. This will not be a completely perfect assignment because there will have been malicious cases that were missed in the past, but this works well in practice. We also compared this labeling scheme to other approaches, and this one seemed to work out the best. Next, we also need to extract features from our data. Features are numerical, Boolean, or categorical characteristics of a registration that get fed into the machine learning model. But first, let me show you what data we actually have as part of the registration. So what is the data that we can extract features from? At registration time, what we have is the domain name itself, of course. We also have the contact details of the registrants, being their name, their address, their phone number, and their email address. These are all freely input by the registrants. We also know which registrar they have chosen to make their registration through. We know at what time they have registered the domain, and if the domain has existed before but has expired, then we also have the timestamp when it was previously released. So from this data, we extract several categories of features. We compute lexicographic features that identify word level or pattern level, character level patterns, in the data. We have domain lifecycle features. For example, if a domain is drop catched, if it was registered very shortly after it was released, then that is a risk factor. We compute reputation features for the country code, the email provider, and the registrar. And finally, we also compute geographical features that, that identify inconsistencies in the address details. So now we have our labels, we have our features. That means we can train a model. And then when the model is trained, we can make it make predictions on new registrations. And this prediction takes the form of a number between 0 and 1, where a higher number means a more suspicious registration. But this alone does not suffice, because we need to make a decision. Either we select the registration for a verification, or we don't, and we just let it through. So there are a couple of considerations there, meaning that requiring verification may induce extra workloads on the customer support team of DNS Belgium, because they might need to review documents, or they might be asked questions about the verification procedure. So this means that, well, we need to put a limit on how many registrations we can select every day. But we also need to make a decision immediately after the registration. So we cannot just wait until the end of the day, then sort the predictions and select the top ones. That's something we cannot do. We need to make the decision immediately. So our approach is that during the training process, we compute the optimal threshold between 0 and 1, and everything above that threshold will be selected. So to make that more specific, we have about 550, a bit more, new registrations every day. And let's assume that we have a capacity of 150 verifications per day. Then we want to set the threshold such that we have about 150 positives per day. And we observed that no matter what thresholds we set, there is a lot of variability in the number of selections per day. And the cause is just that, well, some days happen to have more suspicious registrations than others. That's just how it is. So instead of looking at like the daily basis, we compute a rolling average over 7 days, over windows of 7 days, which still has some variability, but a lot less. And then we set the threshold such that this rolling average never exceeds 150. And that's the value we use as our decision thresholds. On individual days may still exceed 150 selections, but that's actually not a problem in practice as long as the average makes it smoothen out. So we do that process of calculating the threshold at the end of the model training on a validation set of 90 days. And we do not only compute the threshold for 150, a capacity of 150, but we compute it for multiple capacities such that our customer support team can choose the capacity at any time. If they have less capacity for verifications, they can lower the number. It's also important to note that the capacity configuration only determines the threshold. It does not put an actual hard limit on the number of verifications. The reason is that if there would be such a hard limit, then an easy way to circumvent the system would be to just do a lot of suspicious registrations, and then at some point the capacity will be exhausted and your next registration just gets through. And well, we should prevent that, obviously. So that's why the capacity only determines the thresholds. So we have deployed our model in March of 2024. And in the months after, we have taken a look at how well it performed in practice. So first, we try to see if the amount of abuse has actually reduced. And we do this by measuring the number of revoked registrations. If DNS Belgium has to revoke a lower number of registrations, well, then that means that there has been a lower amount of abuse. And indeed, in the months after the deployment of the model, we revoked 30% less, fewer registrations than in the same period the year before. So that's already a good sign. And another observation is that if the prediction of the model is higher, then this correlates with a lower likelihood of completing the identity verification procedure, which means that the model is quite successfully able to identify more suspicious registrations and give these a higher score. So to conclude this presentation, let me end with some takeaways. First, a proactive approach like this is possible for detecting malicious domain name registrations. And a machine learning pipeline is also an improvement over handcrafted rules. And that has been shown both by our experiments and our results after the deployments. And thirdly, this approach is also applicable to other domain name registries. They use the same type of data. We are and have been in touch with some others. So perhaps at some point others may also integrate this. We will see. So thanks for your attention. This work has also been published at KDD this summer. You can read the full paper if you want. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Please.
So, Emanuele Iovini, Europol, but I speak for myself. I like this study a lot. It's a great tool. I think it's important to start to prevent phishing preventively, because we know that phishing happens in the first minutes of the registration of a domain many times. I just want to give maybe a comment. Did you try to pivot sometimes on the registrant as a label to understand other domains registered by the same guy to give a different score? For example, I have a domain, I found the guy is a malicious registered domain, I can pivot to see all the other registered domain by this guy if they are also malicious, maybe give a higher score on malicious.
Yes, well, if it's about past registrations of the same person, then well, if they're malicious and they are revoked, well, then they also get a positive label and they will be included in when the model is retrained, because we train the model on new data every day. So yeah, that would be taken into account in that manner.
Oh, that's great. Just an additional question and then I leave. What are the actions you put in place after thinking, because I see that is like a prediction about the malicious of the domain, you are not sure about it, but you give a score. What are the actions based on the score? So if the score is really high, what you do, and if it's lower, what you do? Is always the same action or they are different?
The action is always the same. If it's above our thresholds, then you need to provide a proof of your identity. And once that's provided, then you can use a domain name, no matter how high the score is. That does not depend on that.
Okay, great. Last suggestion, you can also speak with your ID, the .eu. They also, I think, do some risk approach.
Yes, they have deployed a quite similar approach, and we also compared to that. Their approach is more tailored towards campaigns, but they also do the same concept of requiring identity verification for things that look suspicious. So yeah, we are aware of their work and have compared to it.
Good job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Hi, Tobias speaking for myself. So very interesting. One of the questions I have, did you also look at, this is only new registration, did you have any access to data about existing domains that have become abusive at one point in time, or was that completely out of scope?
No, but that's in the scope, but we use those domains to label. So we use those older domains as training data for a model, and we know they have been abusive, so we can label them as malicious. And then when we train the model, we feed that data into the model, so it learns that, okay, these domains were malicious, they had these characteristics, this can now be used for new predictions. But we do not use the model to predict on all domains, because, well, first they're in the training set, so yeah, we know what they're supposed to be, and also isn't really useful at that stage anymore.
Yeah, one quick follow-up. So one of the things that I think would be really, really interesting, there's a lot of discussions at the moment about those type of systems, the ICANN changes and so on and so forth, about are malicious domains are malicious by at the beginning of a registration process, or legit domains that later get compromised by other means. And so there's kind of this interest in the community, at least from my side and from a lot of other people, to see how much of the bad domains are actually registered for bad purposes, or how many of the abuse cases are based on legit domains. I don't know if this is something that you guys have in that area, but just interested if you have.
Yes, yeah, well, this approach does not help prevent anything right in the compromised domains.
Right.
We have participated in a study together with .nl and .ie to compare the behavior of compromised and maliciously registered domains, which was actually presented at RIPE 89 a year ago.
Okay, cool.
So we have also done some work on that aspect, yes.
Cool, thank you.
Hi, Andrew Camping, speaking for myself as well. Really great presentation, very interesting, excellent research. But just for context, I saw recently there's research that predicts the total cost, if you like, of online scams and fraud globally this year is estimated at $1 trillion. Just to, so this is an important thing that's as part of sort of tackling that. The other thought, and I've got no connection with them, if you need further funding to continue this excellent work, I know Nominet announced sort of their DNS fund a few weeks ago, and that closes, I think, in about a week's time, and they're offering grants of up to, I think it's £100,000, something like that. So if you need funding to take this further forward, that might be worth looking at.
Oh, thank you. That's interesting to keep in mind, at least. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, nothing online? No? Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bring that microphone with me wherever I go. Okay, so that is the end of the. God, my slides are black, and it suddenly feels very, very dark behind me. Any other business that anyone wishes to raise or talk about, or otherwise? No. Cool. In which case, I will remind people that obviously you can. Yeah, there is a mailing list. There is apparently a relevant security working group presentation that was given in the MAT working group around the disruption to the internet caused by some of the laws around copyright and things like that, which I think the proposer is going to send to the mailing list as well, the link, but it's also there in the MAT working group and I think might be of interest to people here. It's often the case that there are items which are of interest to multiple different working groups, and I think we were very aware of the fact security working group when we changed the charter would have both things of interest here that were across others and vice versa. But yeah, so the agenda for RIPE 91, never be afraid to send us things, and also we are working through this. This was the first time with the new system. I think we're a lot more familiar with it now, and we'll have the draft agenda out a lot earlier than we did on this occasion. Just before I finish, a couple of announcements. So the voting has opened for the Programme Committee elections. So you can vote up until Thursday at 1700 local time. If you're registered to vote in the NRO elections, you should have received an email at this point in time giving you all the details. And again, that opened at 1700 and that runs until 9 o'clock, the NRO NC election. And finally, yes, the buses to Kong. So I'm assuming Godzilla will show up at some point indeed this evening. Social will leave from the hotel entrance at 2015 and 2030 local time and will come back later. Thank you all very much, and we hope to see you in Edinburgh at RIPE 92. So, sorry, whatever the next RIPE meeting is. Cool. Have a lovely evening, and I hope to see lots of you at the social. Thank you.